All right, so we're going to talk about the main question that I received is, what were you actually doing to lose the weight? Fasting, we've been talking about fasting, we've been setting the major foundation, the major framework of understanding what insulin is and the importance of insulin and the effect of insulin and the effectiveness, or the way to break that cycle of insulin dependence or resistance is through not eating food, because it's the eating of the food that causes that insulin sensitivity or resistance. And so the best way to break it is through not eating food, which is known as fasting. And so we're going to look at fasting because what was effective for me, or what I was willing to do, it might be something that you're not willing to do. I understand, because fasting is something that people, not everyone's like, oh yay, let me not eat for extended period of time, right? So the good thing about fasting is that it's flexible, and we'll talk about a little bit here. But being flexible when it comes to fasting, there's some different approaches to fasting. Because what does fasting mean? Does fasting mean that you're not going to eat ever again? Does fasting mean that you're going to only eat once a month? What is fasting? Does fasting mean you're not going to eat for 382 days like the guy from Scotland, right? So there's several different approaches to fasting and what fasting means and what fasting does. The overarching name that I say that I did was intermittent fasting. Means that you're fasting on and off. Like the intermittent windshield wipers, they'll go off and then on, so it's not like all the time. So intermittent fasting. And that's the major name. If you Google intermittent fasting, that's kind of what I Googled, and some of this information came up, and Dr. Fung is kind of known as an intermittent fasting proponent. But fasting in general, we're going to look here at these different fasting regimens. So traditional meals, and this is kind of what we looked at before, kind of what you think of, what happens when you eat. You eat at breakfast, you eat at lunch, you eat at dinner, and you don't eat anything in between. And it's usually about a 12-hour window, right? You eat breakfast at 7 a.m., you eat dinner at 7 p.m., right? So in that 12-hour window, you are going to be eating. And not constantly, because you don't have snacks, right? You don't eat between meals, but your body will have the major spikes of insulin in that 12 hours. Now, intermittent fasting, as I explained in a nutshell, as people have passed me in the hallway, what that means is that you're shortening that window. So instead of eating breakfast at 12, eating dinner, or breakfast at 7, eating dinner at 7, having a 12-hour window, what you're trying to do is shorten the window, that time period, that time frame that you're eating. I said the most common way to do that, the easiest way to do that, is to skip breakfast. Some people think, well, breakfast is the most important meal of the day. Again, that's a myth. Breakfast is simply breaking your fast. You can break your fast at 12 in the afternoon, right? There is nothing magical about eating the first thing as you get out of bed. If you're hungry, and maybe your body naturally is hungry in the morning, then it might be easier for you to skip dinner. But most people kind of eat dinner with their family and breakfast on the run, and for most people, it's easier to skip breakfast. For me, I'm not usually hungry in the morning at all, so it's no big deal to skip breakfast. Maybe you're not hungry in the evening. Again, so that's why it's flexible. But the concept is skip one of those meals. Have 2 meals. And so this is kind of an 8-hour window. If you skip one meal, you've gone so you start at 7, or start at 12, so you skip breakfast, so you have lunch at 12, and finish dinner by 8, then you've just cut out 4 hours of window that your insulin is spiking. So you have lunch and dinner, 8-hour eating window. Does that make sense so far? Some people might try to eat an hour earlier. So you have a lunch at 12, have dinner at 6. So you have a 6-hour window, right? Still getting in 2 meals. The whole concept, the basic concept, is to shrink the amount of time that you have insulin coursing through your body. So again, these are all varieties of that basic concept of limiting insulin in your body. So there's a warrior diet. I don't know, for some reason this graph also has the name alternate day fasting. We'll talk about that in a minute here. But warrior diet is further extreme. It's kind of a one meal. In this picture, this graph, it has 4 hours, a 4-hour window. So, you might eat, have a late lunch at 3 and have dinner at 7, or the more extreme is just one meal, so you just have dinner at 7, and they said so you have that one meal that you're eating, and that's just that one period of insulin spiking in your body. That's very closely connected to the 24-hour fast. I didn't write this on your resource sheet, but in the book Eat, Stop, Eat, this is actually written by a weightlifter, Brad Pillion. This is kind of what he promotes, the 24-hour fast, which is, like I said, eating one meal a day, basically. So, and which is fairly easy to do. I know, relatively speaking, because you go home to your family or you go out with friends. Usually it's for dinner, and so it's easy to skip breakfast because you're usually just rushing out the house anyways for breakfast. At lunchtime, maybe just work through lunch, or just just relax during. You don't have to worry about running out to Starbucks or running over to McDonald's or whatever you're doing for lunch. And you can skip lunch at work and then eat dinner at home, and it doesn't disrupt your schedule or your normal flow of life too much, just to do a 24-hour fast. The 5-2 diet. This is, remember at the very beginning I told you about the documentary, Eat Fast, Live Longer. This is the diet that he ultimately settled on. The 5-2 diet refers to days of the week, 7 days in a week. 5 days you eat, 2 days you fast. So, again, and then there's a variety. He said because he did the alternate day diet, which is what we should look at next. But he settled on the 5-2 diet because it's not as strict as every other day, and you can kind of adjust it, because, the 2 days don't have to be consecutive days. So say you have, normally you would like to fast on Monday and Friday, but say you have an important meeting with a client, a business lunch with a client on Monday, and so you need to eat with them. You can just shift that fasting day to Tuesday. Or you have a family engagement on Friday, so you can shift that fasting day to Thursday or Sunday or whatever. So you can, even if you have a preferred 2 days of the week that you want to fast, it's flexible. You can move it around your schedule. The 5-2 diet, the 2-day fasting, and this is going to be the same thing as the next one, which is the alternate day fasting, which is self-explanatory. Every other day diet. You eat one day, you fast the next day. You eat one day, you fast the next day. For these diets, and the 2 days from the 5-2 diet, the 2 fasting days, they consider fasting days to be, you can eat up to 500 calories that day. So actually, some say 700 calories, but mostly say 500 calories. So you can eat on those fasting days, because it's called a fasting mimic diet. Your body responds to eating, if you have less than 500 calories, in the more or less the same way as your body responds to eating nothing. So it's an easier way to really start fasting. And that was my experience. That's when I was getting into this, I began doing the every other day fast. I would eat normally one day, 3 meals a day. I even might have snacked, because I was still kind of getting into it. But then the other day, I would eat a 500 calorie meal for lunch. And they said the lunch is better because it's kind of in the middle of the day, so you get long times on both edges and then about lunchtime you're starting to feel hungry, so you can get a little meal. It's surprised what you can eat for 500 calories. You can get a good amount of food, a good volume of food. 500 calories of broccoli is going to be like a bucket full, So And then, that will keep you through dinner, and then you'll eat again for breakfast. Then, as I began to do more research and actually looking into how the role that insulin plays, I realized that, insulin, that 500 calories actually does produce, does spike your insulin. And if you're really trying to do your best, really trying to lose the weight and get rid of that insulin or increase your insulin sensitivity, to get rid of that meal. And so I did it every other day, eating a 500 calorie meal for the first month. And I lost, 10, I think I even lost more pounds that first month, even with that. But that eased me into it. And so after the first month, I realized that I didn't need to, and that it would be better, and quicker and more beneficial. And I cut that 500 calorie meal out, and, without hardly any problem. And this is another reason why I really like fasting is, and we'll talk about some of the benefits later, but it's easy, and you just don't eat. There's nothing to weigh, there's nothing to balance, there's no points to count, there's no calories to count. And so, just, does it have calories? It does, all right, it's not going into my mouth. And so that day of that 500 calorie meal was a little extra work, because you had to count the calories and had to kind of figure things out, and it was a little bit more effort. It helped, ease into it. But once I cut that out, I was like, oh man, I'm on easy street, because I don't have to worry about having to count and make sure I'm trying to get this and that and whatnot. I know some of you like to count calories, and that's what you've done to great success, but that's not me. It's not my personality type, I guess. I don't have that gift. And so it's just easy just to not count anything. Okay. Yes. We'll there's a slide up here, but water, any non-caloric beverage, water, tea, coffee, black coffee, is something that you can take on fasting. That doesn't count. 36-hour fast. And so after I cut out those 500 calorie meals, then about after a month, as I was reading and as I was growing in my understanding, my third month I started this, which was 36-hour fast. So the second month, I just cut out those 500 calories, and I would eat breakfast, lunch, and dinner. One day, eat nothing. One day, breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Eat nothing the next day. Then I realized that, hey, let's stretch out that window. And remember, the whole point is shrinking that window that insulin is being produced in your body. So let me grow the window that has no insulin in it, right? That time frame without insulin. And so I started doing 36-hour fast every other day. So I would not eat one day, and then I cut out breakfast the next day. So every other day I'd only eat 2 meals. I'd only eat lunch and dinner. And that way my window of insulin being produced was really short. In a 48-hour period, it was only 12 hours. So 36-hour, does that make sense? 36-hour fast, cutting out one meal. Again, if you prefer dinner or breakfast, but that's what a 36-hour fast is going to look like. As you progressively go longer into fasting, there are benefits. The benefits accrue faster, but there's also more risk of complications. But if you do not feel well at any point, you must stop. That's the point. If you're fasting and you start to feel poorly, stop. Now, the key is there's a difference between feeling poorly and feeling hungry, right? You're like, oh, I'm so hungry. I don't feel good because I'm hungry. I got to stuff my face. No, that's not, right? That's not what I'm talking about. There's a difference between, you can be hungry, but you should not feel sick. And I think, we'll actually talk about that here in a moment. But those are relatively easy things. It's usually salt. Headaches and dizziness, drink water, take a little bit of salt, and that will help you tremendously. Feeling sick, I think through the 7 months, I only felt poorly one day when I decided I needed to eat. And it was I was feeling just no energy. I just felt badly. It's kind of hard to explain. It wasn't just a headache. It wasn't just dizziness. It was I just felt gross. Kind of like if you've been sick with the flu and your just whole body just feels off and wrong, and you just don't want to do anything. That's kind of how I felt, and I ate a 500 calorie meal and felt much better. So there is a difference between feeling hungry and feeling sick. Don't feel sick. If you need to eat, eat, right? Because again, the whole point of this is flexibility, and this is the good thing is that if you feel bad one day, and you ate, and even if you ate all 3 meals, you're like, you know what? I blew it today. Tomorrow you can fast, as opposed to some of the other diets where you're like, I can never eat carbs. I'll never eat again, can eat a French fry. And you eat a French fry, and you're like, that's it, I'm done. My diet is broken. And so you just start eating French fries and you never look back, right? Because you've broken it. This is very flexible. Like you have a bad day, you get right back on it the next day because it's just one more day. It's just another day that you can fast and then you get back on the schedule. Again, like I said, it's flexible with the 5-2, even alternate day diet. There's some flexibility. You can fast 2 days in a row. And then if you know that a wedding is coming up, because no one likes to, like you go to a wedding or a party or something and that party pooper that just eats like a carrot, or a celery, like it's a party, like have some cake, like it's time to enjoy life. You're not going to eat cake all the time, so you can adjust, to different life events so you don't have to be that stick in the mud. Continuing on with some of the warnings for 36-hour fasting, another major consideration is that medication must be carefully monitored by a physician, especially if you are diabetic. But if you take medication that needs meals, this is something that you would need to run by your doctor. If you go to his website, Dr. Jason Fung, the Intensive Dietary Management, he actually has some forms that you can take to your doctor if this is something that you're interested in, so your doctor can help monitor. And his forms explain it from a medical perspective, so it's not just some quack that you're like, hey, I want to do this, and your doctor is going to talk you out of it. He might or she might, but he gives you some documents and some paperwork to show that you're actually doing something that's based on medicine and empirical data. The major problem are diabetic medications, because if you take the same dose of medication and do not eat, you will become dangerously hypoglycemic, and you don't want that, right? Because if you usually have your blood sugar at such and such a level because you eat, and you don't eat, your blood sugar is going to go lower, and your insulin, because your body is not going to be producing the insulin because there's nothing to trigger it, and you take that extra insulin, now all of a sudden your body's going to have extra insulin flooding it, and that's going to cause some issues. So if you're diabetic, again, don't make sure that you're having some doctor supervision if you're doing some of these longer fasts. The shorter fast, if you're just going to do like an 18-hour fast, do an 18-hour fasting in a 6-hour window, you'll have that window to eat and take your medication, and so it's not nearly as worrisome or as problematic. But like I said, the longer you fast, the more complications can arise. In general, patients and insulin must be reduced on the fasting day to avoid hypoglycemia. Exactly how much to reduce it should also be overseen by your physician. And Dr. Fung says, I do not recommend, in bold, anyone who is taking any medication to try longer fasts without clearing it with their doctor. All right, I'm not a doctor, so don't go here thinking that I'm telling you to do something. This is all from Dr. Fung, who says, get it cleared with your own doctor. Make sure you're medically supervised if you want to engage in some of these longer fasts. 42-hour long fasts or longer, do not calorie restrict during your eating window. All right, because some people will do a long fast and then they start to micromanage, start counting their calories once they eat again. And then if you're fasting for long periods of time, your body's going to need, just that kind of freedom to eat. You get cravings kind of naturally. Hopefully you don't really need that McDonald's hamburger if that's what you're craving. But it's a craving for vegetables and for protein, and so don't start limiting yourself calorically when you start to eat after longer fasts. And often what you find is surprising that as people get used to fasting, very often their appetite starts to seriously go down. And so, you would think the opposite is true. You haven't been eating, so your appetite's going to keep going up and up and up. But when you have that pattern of fasting, your appetite is going to actually decrease. And so you should eat till you feel satisfied on your eating days. So there's a very good reason for this decrease in appetite. As you start to break the insulin resistance cycle, insulin levels start to decrease. Since insulin is the major regulator of the body's set weight, your body now wants to go lower. In response, hunger is suppressed and total energy expenditure is maintained. So appetite goes down and TEE stays the same or goes up. Remember that standard calorie reductionist primary strategies produce the opposite effect. Appetite goes up and TEE goes down. And so which do you think works in the long run? Right? You have your choice. You want to do the thing that's proven to fail and never work, or you do the thing that has the opposite effect and has a pretty high result of success. Fasting here, the benefits of fasting. It's simple. One rule, don't eat. Nothing complicated about it, right? Don't need to worry about any Weight Watchers points or whatever, or the macronutrients, micronutrients, just don't eat. It's flexible. We've gone through a variety of regimens, right? You have 12 hours. That's the absolute minimum. It's really, unless, you really are in pretty good health, pretty good shape, just doing the basic, it's not going to have that much of effect. But, 16-hour, 18-hour, 20-hour, 23-hour, 36-hour, every other day, 40-plus hour, a lot of variety. There's a lot of regimens. It's flexible, and it can be adjusted to fit your schedule. It's practical. It saves you time and money, right? Time, you don't have to cook, you don't have to run, or go to the restaurant even. It literally saves a lot of time, and it saves money. You're not buying as much groceries. You're not buying, going and having to go out to lunch or buy food at restaurants. I calculated that, in the 7 months that I was doing every other day, I saved about $1,000. I don't know if that says I spent a lot of money on food or what, but that was a ballpark of the money I saved in the 7 months. And most of all, it's effective. It's effective. It's been effective for me. It's been effective for a lot of people in this church. So why don't you hear about it? Why is fasting such a completely different approach to weight loss? And the main reason is it fails to make other people money. If you think about all the other approaches to weight loss, there's always something to buy. There's always some membership to join. There's always this or always that's going to take money out of your wallet, and literal wallet, not your glycogen wallet, but your literal wallet, and put it into someone else's bank, right? And so who's going to make money off of telling you not to eat? No one's going to make money, right? So that's why you find, and one of the reasons why obesity has been climbing is that food companies have been paying researchers to say that we need to eat more because they make money off of us eating more. No one makes money off of us not eating. And so this is why it's kind of a secret. This is why it's so not well known and why there's so much misinformation out there, is because this does not make anyone money. And I know there's some resources books that you might be interested in buying, but that's what it is. They're not that expensive. The Obesity Code, which is the one I most highly recommend, it's basically Dr. Jason Fung's website that he's organized into a nice book. I think it's like $12. I don't know how much the other ones are, but I think they're at the same price range, less than $20. And that's all. There's no membership. There's nothing. And it's just, money. They're trying to cover the cost of the book, get some information out there to you. They're not going to become rich off of this information. So that's why no one really knows too much about fasting as a diet approach. So frequently asked questions. Dr. Fung and others have a lot of people asking them questions like this. What can I take or eat on fasting days? So Kim asked. He recommends water, tea, coffee, black. No. He said you can add some cream if you want, but that's going to add calories. So he said, why would you do that? But definitely no sugar. So he recommends black. All kinds of tea. He said green tea. That helps to suppress appetite, but herbal tea, oolong tea, whatever you want. He said in coffee, you want to add things to make it taste a little different, so add spices like cinnamon or nutmeg. Right. Gatorade, again, that's if you look at the ingredients, there's not that stuff good for you. But like you said, electrolytes is right, and And Pat mentioned that, without the electrolytes, you might get a little headache, a little dizzy, but that's salt. And really what Gatorade, if you remember, I remember Gatorade in the 80s, tastes nothing like it does today. Gatorade in the 80s was salty, because that's what it was there, to try to help replenish the electrolytes. And so, it might not be great, but, just mix a little salt water. There's, plenty of people say they'll drink half a cup of lightly salty water, and that will help them deal with their needs. So what about zero-calorie drinks? Yeah, any zero, so this is kind of is the same kind of question as this. What about zero-calorie drinks? Some people say, you can. That's not really, it's not going to be adding anything to you, but there's a lot of chemicals in them, which is not what you want to be drinking anyways. And people find, and I guess it's person to person, that drinking, a Diet Coke stimulates their appetite. So they were doing fine before, but they decided to drink a Coke, and then all of a sudden they're just hungry, and they just can't, they want to eat, and they end up eating, So, you can. I did it on a couple of times, had a Dr. Pepper diet or something, I don't know. But yeah. So stevia, it's natural, and it's 0 calories. That's kind of the key is 0 calories. So, you could add Equal or Splenda or whatever, because it's 0 calories too. But again, it's the same problem as this. It's not good for you to begin with. Yeah. We didn't get into this, but there's the glycemic index. There's a lot of, quote, healthy sugars that are still super high on the glycemic index that stimulate your insulin, and agave is one of them, and something else, but stevia was the one that wasn't. So, yeah, maple syrup, even though it's better than straight table sugar, it still has a high glycemic index, and so it's going to amp up your body's production of insulin. Again, healthier than the other, but still, if your goal is to break that insulin sensitivity or to increase insulin sensitivity, you don't want to take that. So how do you break my fast? Gently, the first few times at least. Try breaking your fast with a handful of nuts or a small salad to start, then wait 15 to 30 minutes before you have a larger meal. Short duration fast, 24 hours or less, generally don't require any special, there's nothing you really need to break your fast. It's only longer than a day that your body might have adjusted. Your stomach might need a little bit of a priming to get a good meal in. For me, personally, I never needed, I jumped in from 36 hours. The longest I fasted was 5 days. And after that, I eased myself into 5 days, but I did several 2 days. I've done a lot of 2 days. I've done several 3 days. After 3 days, I still jumped right in. I think after 3 days, I ate a full meal, and I had no problems. But I generally have a strong stomach. But no. But yeah. New research is showing that, I know we didn't talk about it here, but at 5 days, there were some things that happened at 5 days, if you remember. But at 5 days, your body starts to go to I'm not pronouncing this right, autophagy. It starts to eliminate all of the bad cells in your body. So they said they found that your body will start attacking cancer cells that it normally didn't notice. It'll start to get rid of a lot of other dead cells. And so they recommend if you can do a 5-day fast twice a year, your body is going to eliminate a lot of the dangerous things that kind of accumulate in there. Again, that's kind of cutting edge stuff. Not too much is known. We didn't really get into it much. So what can I do when I get hungry? Because everyone's going to get hungry, even after 7 months, and I could do a day pretty easily without getting hungry. Start of the next day though, starting getting into the middle of the next day, the stomach would start rumbling, and I would start getting hungry. So you're going to get hungry. So what do? Drink water. Really, you'll be surprised once you start fasting that you're going to be able to tell the difference between what you thought was hunger and what actually is a thirst. Hunger is a lot of the times what we think is hunger, it's actually just our body needing water. And so when you can't eat and you're just drinking water, you start to recognize the difference in the two different signals. So drink water. You'll start, if you had a trouble getting your 8 cups of water in a day, when you're fasting, you won't, because you're going to be hungry, and so you're going to be drinking the water that you need to get, plus a little bit more. Eat a little bit of cinnamon. They found that cinnamon has a little appetite suppressing effect. I just learned this today as I'm making this. Chia seeds. I think Leo was saying, we were talking about that yesterday at potluck, or at lunch. Eating dry chia seeds, you can, or put them in the water, and they kind of turn into like a little jelly or pudding. They're almost 0 calories, and they'll give you a little substance to help deal with that hunger. Yeah. Dilute apple cider vinegar in water. It's 1 tablespoon per glass. I did this every morning on my fasting days, and it was delicious. No. Some people are like, they love it, but I didn't love it. But it definitely, I think it helped, and it helped with some people. Yeah, it's good. If you fast for a long time, your body starts to do a few different kinds of things. You'll notice like a white film build up on your tongue, and I was getting that, but the apple cider vinegar takes care of that, plus suppresses appetite. And another thing is to focus on the goal, right? One of the mantras I told myself when I would get hungry, and I know there's some people who say, don't talk bad about yourself, negative self-talk. I was like, I tell myself I'm hungry, or my mind would be like, I'm hungry. And I was like, you're not hungry, you're fat, And then I'm like, all right, and then, then I kind of transitioned that one to be like, no, you've done the easy part of eating. Now you got to do the hard part, And so, and that would, try to keep focused on the goal of why you're going through that, or why you're feeling hunger, helps, your body's like, oh, you're right. All right, you're not going to give in, and it moves on. I don't think I'm ever going to go back to eating 7 days a week. I don't, I've, in the past 5 months, since I did stop doing every other day, I transitioned more to a 5-2 diet, fasting 2 days a week. And they said that that's actually optimal for everyone. If you know anything about Bible history, the Pharisees, they fasted 2 days a week. The religious leaders, they fasted 2 days a week for health reasons and for spiritual reasons. But that's not an uncommon thing. Through history, people have fasted twice a week. But on vacation, I didn't fast, because I was out of town, and, how often are you going to get to eat some of the foods on the other side of the world? So, but regularly eating 7 days a week, I don't, think that that's going to happen for me. I don't know. Yeah. Yeah, and so 5-2 gives you a little bit more leeway to eat that cheeseburger if you want, drink that milkshake, eat those fries. But if you do want to just to make sure you're eating very clean, then probably, then just shrinking, making sure you're staying within that 12-hour window. If you eat very clean and if you reach your optimal weight and you're eating clean, that normal 12-hour window of fasting, that most people eat between night and breakfast, will be sufficient. So it depends on what you want to eat, what you don't want to eat, what your ultimate goals are, what your current health level is. Here's what I mentioned earlier: salt is helpful for getting headaches, for feeling dizzy, but it's usually not necessary for shorter fasts. Usually, I noticed it, starting on my 2nd day of fasting, definitely 3rd day of fasting, I would need some salt. 4th, 5th day of fasting, most definitely salt. But if you're just starting off and you do feel a headache coming on, drink some water. If that doesn't help, take some salt. And if you same thing if you start feeling lightheaded or dizzy. All right, this last thing, the top 8 intermittent fasting tips. First one is to drink water. Start each morning with a full 8-ounce glass of water. I would drink 2 glasses of water in the morning. It just fills you up, gets your body going the right way. Stay busy. It'll help keep your mind off food. It was a lot easier usually to fast when you're busy. Some of you get busy and just forget to eat normally, right? And it's because you're preoccupied. So stay busy, and the time will fly. It's often helpful to choose a busy day at work for a fast day. Drink coffee. They found that coffee is a mild appetite suppressant. Green tea, black tea, and bone broth may also help. Again, I would recommend decaffeinated, because caffeine is a stimulant, and there's other effects from caffeine. But they according to Dr. Fung, drink some coffee. Yeah, we'll actually talk about that's number 5, not the scale, but number 4 is ride the waves. It's good to know that hunger comes in waves. It's not something that comes. Sometimes we think that hunger. Oh, I'm hungry. I'm going to be hungry for the rest of my life, right? But it comes and it goes. It ebbs and it flows. So it's not a continuous feeling. So when it hits, slowly drink a glass of water or a hot cup of tea or coffee, and usually by the time you're done drinking, it will be subsided. It will have gone away. Number 5, don't tell anybody you're fasting. Now I know this kind of goes against what George just said, but this really is. I didn't mention I was fasting until probably month 4 or 5, or maybe 3. Besides Crystal, this was, and it was only after I started losing weight, people started noticing, people started asking, and then even then, I didn't launch into, oh, I'm not eating every other day. I would just say I try to just say I'm not eating as much, or I'm just exercising more, which I was going to the gym as well. Because most people will try to discourage you. Going back to those myths, fasting, that's crazy. Fasting, you're putting yourself into starvation mode. Fasting, this, and they will just try to discourage you because they don't understand the benefits. Because hardly anyone really takes the time to learn about what we've learned about so far today. A close-knit support group is often beneficial, but telling everybody you know is not a good idea. Give yourself 1 month. It takes time for your body to get used to fasting. The first few times you fast may be difficult, so be prepared. Don't be discouraged. It will get easier. Like I said, I eased myself into it. The first month, I ate that 500-calorie meal. The second month, I cut it out. The third month, I started going back to the gym. I didn't go to the gym for the first 2 months. And then I increased it from 24 hours to 36 hours. So you eased into it, and it got easier. And now I can go a whole day without eating, kind of in the blink of an eye, no issues, usually. 7, follow a nutritious diet on non-fast days. Intermittent fasting is not an excuse to eat whatever you like. During non-fasting days, stick to a nutritious diet low in sugars and refined carbohydrates. But this is, again, it's a tip for alternate day fasting. That's when you look at the video, if you watch the documentary and they go to see Dr. Faraday, he says, he didn't eat for one day, and then the next day she takes him to a drive-in and they get a hamburger, fries, and milkshake. And he's like, it's hard to believe I'm eating a cheeseburger and I'm on a diet. And so you can, all right? I'm going to say that you can. It's going to slow down your progress. It's not going to happen as quickly or as, it may take a little longer, but that's kind of one of the benefits, as I see, is because you don't have to cut out things completely all the time. Like I'm never going to eat, like George said, a French fry again. If that works for you, that's good. But some of us don't have that built into us. And we think of a diet as, I can't do a diet because that's going to be just torture for the rest of my life, and I can't do that. I need my French fries. And so this is a way to, hopefully you're not eating, 3 pounds of French fries. Obviously, you're not eating a cheeseburger every day or every other day, but you can still incorporate some of the food that you like, even fairly frequently, and still lose a good amount of weight. The 8th point is don't binge. After fasting, pretend it never happened. Eat normally as if you had never fasted. So don't go home and say, oh, I fasted, so now I'm going to eat all the cookies, With that, we're done. Any questions? Kim? I was just apple cider vinegar. Sometimes I would be at places that had water. Yeah, but with lemon and it's good. Sometimes you just want a taste, something to taste. They found that on your fasting days, so even when I cut out the 500 calorie meal, they found that insulin, if you eat something less than 30 calories, some say 50 calories an hour, that doesn't trigger your insulin. Your body can handle about 50 calories, 30 calories without insulin, without producing insulin. So that would mean there would be days, when I was trying to go 2 days or something without that I was really wanting something. So I'd eat a strawberry, and just eating a strawberry, that was sufficient. It was less than, that 50 calories for the hour, but it didn't trigger insulin. Any other questions? Yes. 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 Yeah. 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 Right. Yeah. And about bringing up doctors, something I didn't mention is, a lot of doctors don't know this. Most doctors don't know this. Most doctors don't know hardly anything when it comes to nutrition. They said that most doctors get about 2 weeks of nutrition in medical school. And so most doctors, the diet advice they give you is just kind of, they go with the flow. And right now the flow is low carb, high protein, or maybe low carb, high fat. So they don't really know what's going on. And so the book on the list that we didn't mention is Proteinaholic. And it's written by a doctor that he specialized. He had a TV show doing bariatric surgeries. Kind of one of the nation's leading weight loss doctors. And he was prescribing low fat, low carb, high protein. And his patients who would lose a lot of weight because of the surgery would come back overweight. And he was like, it's their fault. They're not listening to this diet. And then he said, I'm following the diet. And then he realized he was getting overweight. And anyways, it's a good story. It talks about how this nation is consumed with this idea that we need more protein, more and more protein. He said it's based on wrong information, comes out of World War II when there was real threats of shortages, and so the government was trying to make sure everyone was covered, but then they keep building on it. Anyways, the best part of that book is there's a chapter or 2 chapters in there about all of the information that comes. We're just overwhelmed with information, right? 1 week, we were talking about this last night with some friends. 1 week you hear a study that says chocolate is good for you. Next week it says no, chocolate's going to kill you. 1 week you're going to hear, wine is excellent for you. Then you hear that wine is horrible for you. So it's all these competing things that seem to be as equal, has the same amount of credibility. And how do you know if they're all saying the exact opposite? So he goes through in that book, there's a chapter, like I said, a chapter or 2 that tells you how to weed through the noise and how to identify the good research from the stuff that's sponsored by Coca-Cola Incorporated, So that, I recommend that, especially for that chapter. Roland. The fasting? Yeah, it helps your kidneys because you're drinking water, and so one of the things that measure, that it helps is your visceral fat, the fat around your organs. So so those organs are going to have a little bit more room to breathe, and plus you're drinking the water that you need. And so, yeah, it as long as you are drinking the water, your kidneys should be fine, and if not improved. Paul. Right, exactly. Yeah. And, a lot of if you're eating, 20 hours a day, your body's just not resting. Your digestive system needs a break, just like your brain needs a break. That's why you sleep. Like your body needs a break. That's why you sit down. Your legs get tired. Your digestive system gets tired too. And so by limiting the window, whether it's not a full day or if it's just 18 hours out of a day, it helps your body kind of rest and reset. Any other questions? Emily? Right, yeah. And because if you eat 6 smaller ones, your body's going to continually produce, that insulin. So the less you eat, the better. The less frequency you eat, the better. So yeah. Pat? Ask Crystal. So honestly, I'm going to speak for her. I think unless she wants to, it does cause a little change, right? So she's used to eating dinner with me every day, and then all of a sudden, that's not going to happen, So she has to adjust, and sometimes she adjusts sometimes she kind of skips meal or doesn't eat as much as she normally would because I'm not eating that day. But I think with your partner, she knows that I needed to lose weight, and so she was, even though it was a sacrifice on her part to an extent, maybe not as much as not eating completely, they understand, and a good spouse, good partner will be supportive of you and understanding. But it does, there's a big social component, there's a big cultural component to it, and doing this goes against that. So there is going to be that resistance. There is going to be that feedback. The benefit is that there's just the two of us. There's people writing in, telling their stories that they're the mom, a stay-at-home mom that cooks for the whole family, and that, they talk about hard to fast, when you're cooking and trying to feed everyone and do all of that. But is that pretty close? All right. Any questions? Other comments? Yeah, so like I said, I didn't start working out for the first 2 months because I was just I'm like, you know what? Not eating is good enough. I'm going to ease kind of into this. But working out on fasting, when you're fasted, all right, Paul, see you, is good. There's several athletes that do this. Working out in a fasted state, actually, like we talked about that growth hormone, it actually produces, so when you're already, your glycogen is running low, your body's going to be more ready to produce the growth hormone. So they work out. They do endurance. They do lift weights in a fasted state, and they see good results. Again, if you saw, I didn't put any pictures on there. They're not big bodybuilders, right? Because you can't. It is hard. It's going to be very difficult to gain muscle when you're doing fasting, but they are ripped. They are very high definition and not small muscles, but good sized muscles. But they're not the guys that have to turn sideways to walk into a door. So when I went to the gym, I didn't do any powerlifting. I've done just do more circuit training with the weights, but it's still been really effective. Any further questions? All right, was this interesting? Was this helpful? Good? All right. Thank you for coming. I appreciate your time. I didn't want to prepare all this for just Crystal because she's heard a lot of this before. So let's close with prayer. Heavenly Father, we thank you so much for giving us these bodies and for wanting us to be able to enjoy them through health. And for some reason, Lord, it just seems that more and more of us are just gaining weight. And Lord, we want to lead healthy and long lives. And so, Lord, I hope that the information that I've learned, that I've shared today can be a blessing and a benefit to all of us here, that we can be healthier, that we can lead the kind of healthy lives that you want for us. Lord, thank you so much for this opportunity that we've all had to come, to learn, and to grow. And so dismiss us with your blessing. In the name of Jesus we pray. Amen.